All right, today is the day. We are working on a little heat management on the Arete project. We have over there on the turbo side of the car some problems with some heat that's going to be going on there. We have some headers. Well, we're going to be building some headers. They're going to be producing a lot of heat. The turbochargers themselves are going to be producing a lot of heat. And we have a sponsor in this video, which is going to help us with the turbocharger side. We're going to be looking at some PTP turbocharger blankets, some insulated blankets that fit over your turbocharger, help contain that heat in there. Also a little wrap to go on the exhaust as it leaves that turbocharger, and then some ceramic coating on the headers that we're about to build. Anyway, that sounds like a lot of stuff going on, and it is, so let's jump in, take a look. Now this is what we're talking about when we say turbo blanket. Now these are fitted boots that are sewn from a basalt fabric that's covering a calcium silicate internal insulation. Additionally, they've got a stainless steel fabric or mesh that wraps all around this thing to kind of protect all the fibers. Then depending on your application, they've got permanent hardware on them like these capstan rivets that we can use to attach them right to the turbo. Now when I opened up the package from PTP, I was astounded. This thing is beautiful. And I'm not typically easily impressed. Now, being that I have an industrial sewing machine, I've tried to sew some pretty heavy stuff before, and whoever was sewing these things has some pretty awesome skills to put them together. Although they're not being added for the bling, they're going to work just great. Now to fit these things in, I've had to cut a hole here in the plate that the turbos are mounted on, or at least enlarge that hole because the bottom of the turbo hangs down into it. But that's okay. Cut away just enough to not weaken that whole mount, but give us enough room for that turbocharger to slide through there. And we're going to just take our time just to make sure, even though it's a nice tight fit, that we don't snag something and unravel something on these blankets, even though they've got that nice stainless steel mesh to kind of protect them. We'll work it through nice and slow, and as soon as we get the bottom rivet through, we know we're far enough along. We're going to take some aircraft safety tie wire and create the anchoring system to hold these blankets onto the turbocharger. Now, the little capstan rivets that they provided got a nice little neck to twist the wire on. We're going to take our time and try to make these twists look nice and beautiful, just like you would if you're building an airplane or some other thing that needed safety tie wires. And then we're going to go down and fasten it to a low nut that's kind of right in the right position, pulls that thing in the angle we want. Luckily there's lots of studs on this side of the turbocharger to do this. And with the stud, once you've got the bolt actually holding the manifold in place, there's enough of the stud sticking out that we'll be able to put an extra nut on there to hold this wire in place. Although I can see that these wires will easily be able to be taken off and on if you for some reason need to remove the blanket and reinstall it. The wires will be there ready to go as well. Okay. Get the last little loop twisted up to look nice, and then it will pull down and attach to that far stud on the manifold as it exits the turbocharger on this side. Clip off the extra wires, like I said, make them nice and neat and tidy. Stretch that wire out to get it straight, pull it down and anchor it onto our stud. And there it is. All three have got some wire holding them in position. Now we also need to make sure that our wastegate actuator, little tab sticking up right there, clears. All right, we got plenty of clearance. Once we get that mechanism all installed, it won't be interfering with it. Let's take a look on the whole backside, see how this thing fits on there. Of course, keeps the heat on the turbocharger into the turbocharger and not over onto the compressor side. We want to keep that air nice and cool. One down. And why have one when you can have two for twice the price? So, opening the box, get number two, I found, hey, PTP sent a whole spool of stainless steel wire. That was sure nice of them. I may be only using about 14 inches, so I've got a whole spool of wire for other projects in the future. Same thing, just slide this blanket around through the hole in the mounting plate. Now it's time to move on to keeping the wastegate and the downpipe cool. Now this is made out of the same basalt fabric in this color. Somehow they're able to color it either black or this greenish gold. We've of course chosen this lava is what they call the color. Going to go with our scheme if there is a scheme for this kind of thing. PTP also sells these little sleeves that cover tubing to protect them if they're close to something. I had this on hand, but they sell the same thing. The kit comes with a little catalog. I'll say catalog, but some things. Some springs. You can, instead of using the tie wire, you can use these little springs to attach the blanket on. And of course some stickers to brand their product wherever they go. Now in this little brochure, you'll be able to see that they have lots of different things going on in their business. Turbochargers for all kinds of crazy arrangements that these manufacturers have created, and different colors that they can create. Here we've got the little sleeves we're talking about. You can wrap wiring or tubing in to protect them. They also have gold foil. I might have to get that from them. And a list of many different vehicles that they've created their blankets for, in case you have a regular vehicle and not building something from the ground up like we are. Anyway, that's enough talking about what they sent in the kit. Let's get on using the kit to wrap these manifolds that leaves the turbocharger. Now you're gonna say, what's he doing? He's not putting any wrap on the manifold, but he's instead tying a piece of stainless steel tubing to it. And yes, I am. Now this piece of tubing is going to be a condensation removal system. Yes, that's right. We're going to put these little stainless steel tubes on our exhaust pipe as it enters here, because there is a problem when you decide you're going to wrap headers or exhaust systems with a fiber material, that it does trap condensation. Of course, we all know that when you cool off a piece of metal, it will draw moisture out of the air and condense it onto the metal itself. You've seen this when you start up your vehicle in the morning and a lot of water runs out of the tailpipe. That is because exhaust system cooling down to draw on temperatures in there. Now these tubes have little notches cut in them so they can pick up moisture all along the path, and that moisture can travel along these tubes and escape out each end. We'll get those anchored on with a piece of that stainless steel tie wire, and I'll also hook one end with a piece of electrical tape. Of course, as we start the wrap and work our way down, we get to the end where that electrical tape is, we can just remove the tape. Now to start these wraps, pretty simple. You just capture the frayed end that you cut off and get a few wraps around it, pull it tight, and that will capture the end and let you start working your way down. Now it's just a matter of poking it through. In my case, I've got two parallel pipes, so I have to slide it between the two, keep going round and round, keep the tension right, keep the wrap moving forward, of course, without covering itself over too many times, but not stretching out too far that you get gaps between it. Now here I am going down the wastegate tube. Yes, I have created independent wastegate tubes. Now the system of these turbochargers came with, the downpipes had just kind of a box at the end of the turbocharger where the wastegate and the exhaust system all dumped into the box and then found their way to the exit port and started going down the tube. I have created separate wastegate tubes that go about 10 inches long so that that flow out of the wastegate can accelerate down and mix into the exhaust tube. Another little maybe performance advantage gain. Now the problem with this basalt fiber is that you can't take a torch and melt the end like you would with a piece of nylon webbing. That would be kind of defeating the purpose to wrap your hot exhaust pipe with something that can be melted with a torch. So I take a piece of electrical tape, wrap the end so that it doesn't turn into a frayed mess as you're going round and round the pipe as you wrap. Now I talked about having these little stainless steel tubes being wrapped alongside the exhaust pipe. because there's this problem with not only condensation being trapped in there, but with the condensation comes a little problem with moisture trapped within your wrap itself. And then you fire up your engine and go for a hard run, create a lot of excessive heat. That trapped moisture can turn to superheated steam and cause even more heat than the pipe was originally going to have. So we want to get that moisture out as quickly as possible. That is the purpose of those little stainless steel tubes. Extend the longevity from corrosion and prevent extremes in our pipe system that we were trying to prevent with this wrap. So once our wastegate tube is all covered off and terminated, we're going to start our wrap around the main exhaust pipe. That's going to come down and cover up the end of the first wrap on the wastegate tube. That'll trap it. Then we'll just keep working our way down around. We'll come down. We have to make a little gap or arrangements to go around that little nipple you see sticking up. That is for our O2 or oxygen sensor. One in each turbocharger side. And as that tube comes down, the wrap comes down around the tube, we need to find a way to terminate it there. Now that's pretty simple in at least the temporary side. We'll cut off our electrical tape because we don't want that left in there to be stinking and burning. Cut it off. And then we'll just loosen up our wrap just slightly. Tuck that frayed end back underneath the wrap. And put on a stainless steel zip tie. Another thing that came along with this kit, the kit from PTP, little stainless steel zip ties. That'll keep that thing from rotating back around, or will it? Now I found that these little stainless steel zip ties, although nice and tidy and beautiful, they just didn't seem to tighten up as much as I would like to have seen. So I will probably try to source me some good looking stainless steel pipe clamps that I can really torque down and hold this wrap from being able to vibrate. I don't think it would unwrap unless it can start to rotate. Here's the new tubes on the number 2 turbocharger. You can see I've bent them to fit right along the side of the pipe, got some little notches in it. We'll do the same thing here. Start a wrap by tucking the loose frayed end in behind the wrap so that we don't see the frayed end, and then nice and tight keep that wrap going around and around the pipe as we work our way down. Now it seems like everything seems to work well, and this system would go extremely fast if you didn't have 2 parallel pipes everywhere you're trying to work, with our exhaust pipe and our wastegate tube coming down alongside of each other. But with a little bit of work and tucking and pulling, we're going to get these things totally wrapped up and be able to keep some heat away from this area. Once it gets down to the area where I'm talking about right now, we have exposed exhaust pipes. There will be a lot more airflow to keep things cool. There they are, nicely wrapped and ready. Well, with the wrap and the blankets on there, we have a little protection for the components around the turbocharger, and especially to the car itself. Being that the car is built out of a combustible material, we want to make sure that we never have to go into that realm of worrying about burning the car up. And if you need to go some performance advantages, there are those added to being able to insulate your turbocharger. To get more information on that, of course, you can go to ptpturboblankets.com. And I'll, of course, have a link down in the description. There's also a link there to an article or a research paper that was done by a university giving you more information about why it's a good idea to keep your turbo insulated and protected that way. Go ahead and go look down there. But now you've probably been seeing that we've had the headers sitting here in the view all the time. Let's take a look at how those were built as well. Okay, now on to the headers. You've been seeing them, but let's see how they were built. We got about 5 inches of space between our head port and this flange right here. And coming over to this flange here, well, a little more than 5 inches to there, but the distance we have from here with this bellows system that we're going to put on is about 5 inches. So this bellows is going to be able to isolate the engine from vibration and from heat and cold shrinkage and expansion. We'll mark this up and cut them, go put them on the bench and weld them up. First, we need to create us a merge collector to go with that bellows. Of course, we have twin turbochargers, 6 cylinders. We're going to need 2 merge collectors to bring 3 to 1 in each case. Now I've found some bends, some 45s, 90-degree bends in a 10-gauge stainless steel. Found some pipe, 10-gauge pipe, stainless steel pipe to match it. We're going to use that pipe to make our merge collector. You can either, sometimes you can find patterns online for the different size pipes. I think I created this thing. This is going to be, like I said, 3 to 1. And I had wanted to get these pipes. You want to keep them as tight as you can, but you also need to have them spread out to a point where you can actually weld the thing together. Get your torch in there to weld things. Now there is the ability, if you create a short merge collector like this, that's kind of a stubby thing, that you can weld on the inside of it as well. And that's what I've done here, so you don't have to get down in that really tight V neck. Weld that on the inside. I will weld on the outside a little bit here just to strengthen this thing up, because I'm also going to beat this thing a little bit on the open end to make it round to fit onto our bellows. A little first pipe piece that's going to go on here is a 2-inch 45-degree that's going to give that just a slight turn as it comes out of the bellows to point our merge collector towards the manifold that we're going to be building on each of these turbochargers. Now with the merge collector welded into the bellows, time to put the next target destination. That is going to be the 3 pieces of pipe that come out of the cylinders themselves. That big steel bracket that bolts to the side of the head. We're going to put 3 90-degree bends, each coming out. Of course, the furthest one there is going to come up and back towards the firewall. The middle one pretty much straight up. And then the front one not quite as much away from the others, but up as well. Then it's a matter of taking each of these fittings. Like I said, I bought a set of 45s and a set of 90s. Didn't know how many I need. I just kind of took a wild guess at it, but it came out to be pretty close. I think I had 2 fittings left over. But anyway, take these bends, start trying to create something that will point from one fitting to the next. Once you got 2 bends that are pointing right at each other, it's time to cut a piece of straight pipe that's going to connect the 2 together. I took a piece of popsicle stick and insert it between the 2 bends to get a measurement, break it off, sand it off, whatever you need to do to get it the right length. Then transfer that length over to the piece of straight pipe. Because typically I could not get the bends to be perfectly perpendicular faces to each other, and so you have to cut a little bit of an angle into each end of the straight pipe until that thing fits in there just nicely. Now you see me here just fitting the pieces and tack welding them, but to save your sanity and mine, I'm not taking the camera back into the other room where I had the grinder and the saw to watch all that process of me cutting, grinding, and reaming each piece out. But you're just seeing me come trial fit, tack weld them in place. I want to get 2 or 3 really good tack welds to hold this thing in position. I'm going to put 2 of the 3 pipes together here on the car to fit the thing, and then I'll go in, and after I have welded the first 2 pipes completely, which gives me a lot more access to be able to weld all the way around the pipes, that 3rd pipe will be put into place. Now there is possibility, now a lot of times if you're doing this you have to have some kind of a jig, especially if in production you have to have a jig to hold everything in place so there's no warpage. But in our case, we have this bellows system, which is pretty flexible, and it's going to allow us to, if we get any warpage welding it on the bench, it will make sure that we can still align things from the manifold to the turbocharger without any problem. There it is all tack welded together. Like I say, 2 pipes. The 3rd pipe will be added after we get this thing fully welded. Now to get this weld all done, you can see that with a set of even just 3 pipes, you've got to turn this thing in about 450 different directions to have access to all the welds. And you have to plan as you're going to make sure that you have enough distance between the pipes that you can get your TIG torch tip between them, but not so much that it doesn't fit in the vehicle. Kind of a battle. Now once they're all welded up, sandblast them babies, let's get them coated with some ceramic. Now this is a color called Glacier Gold. I was hoping for a little more of a bronze color, but it's going to be just fine. Now you see in the video with it sped up here, it looks like I'm spraying this thing and it's spinning around like crazy, but actually it's turning at just a nice leisurely pace. At first I thought this was going to be a pain, but it actually worked out quite well to kind of present itself that I could see any missed spots until you get this thing completely coated. There it is. Next day, once this baby's cured, we're going to bring it out, put it back onto the car, see how things look, see how things fit. Now originally you can see in that front turbocharger you got studs sticking out. I have had to remove the studs because I cannot slip these things on even with the flex and the bellows and get them around onto the studs, especially when I have the intake plenum in place. So I will be pulling all the studs out and inserting them stud first rather than slipping it over the studs and putting the nuts on. We're going to throw that intake plenum on there. I am still working on the new intake plenum. You've seen the old one maybe. This will be a new bright and beautiful one. We'll put the air feed to the intercooler there on to make sure everything's kind of still fitting. Now you may notice on this front header that there are a couple of studs sticking up. There's some on the back one as well. But this is going to be for a little heat shield. We still have a pretty tight fit between that intake plenum, which is going to be made of some high temperature epoxy, but not high enough that we want to risk burning it. So this just represents the shield that we'll be creating. Going to get some stainless steel sheet with some ceramic wool, build some little heat baffles. Like I say, one right here that sheet metal represents. There'll be another one in the back here to protect that plenum right there, and of course the firewall. Well, now that we have these blankets and this wrap on this part of the muffler here, we are going to be able to maybe control a little bit of that heat that's coming off of these turbochargers. Of course, you know that there are so many components packed into this area with our intake here that we will be working on in the near future. We got our air cleaner here, and then of course our turbo output over to the intercooler. All that stuff jammed in here creates kind of a bottleneck for air movement. A little bit better air movement across the manifolds here because there's a big gap behind the turbochargers, and we have this duct on the side of the car that's going to allow air to come right in here. We will put extra port here to deflect some of that air up to cross those manifolds, and in the event we need to, we can add a fan into that system to blow some air purposely back there. Once all that air is able to get past that into this area, although there's a lot of components packed into here, it's still lots of air area flow to move through into some very large exit ports in the back bumper. Anyway, that should be enough to control what we have here. Never going to be able to tell until we get this baby running, but that gets a little bit closer to that point. Well, that is a good step forward on our heat management back here. We'd like to thank PTP Turbo Blankets for supplying these components to us to help cool that area that's going to be very critical. And I'm going to put a video up right here and another one over here. Those are a couple of videos that were some of the work that did previous to this. Make sure you jump over and take a look at those. And also make sure you subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell. That'll give you videos when they pop up so that you can jump back, come back, see us again.